day they decided to sack 100 pilots Israel. This is very, very significant. Yet hardly anyone is talking about this. And in Israel, they're trying not to make a big scene out of it. They sacked them. So the IDF chief of staff, alongside the head of the Air Force in Israel, they sacked them. And Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel Katz, his defense minister, his little poodle, they are supporting this. They're not only supporting this, they're also saying that this is an extremist fringe group, right? This is an extremist fringe group at the margins, signed a letter to bring down the government. This is what they're saying. This is not a fringe group. This is not an extremist fringe group. As a matter of fact, these people probably have a little bit more sense than Benjamin Netanyahu himself. And in that report, they're trying to downplay who signed the letter, saying that none of them played any senior role previously inside of Israel. Again, liars, outright liars. One of them was the commander of the Air Force and the previous IDF chief of staff, who fought in the previous 1973 war with Israel, Dan Halutz. This man over here. He was the IDF chief of staff, and he was leading the Air Force as well. He was one of those people who signed the letter. And there's another guy called Nimrod Shefer. Nimrod Shefer, another guy who they sacked, who was previously holding top positions in the Israeli army. So it's these people who they are claiming in Israel are not that important. The previous IDF chief of staff, everyone becomes non-important. Now, this is for people to understand the level of refusal coming in, and from who. Outright refusal during a war. These things are very dramatic, and they affect the capability of the Israeli army to conduct any missions that they want, by the way. And we're not only talking about Gaza, because if 100 have been sacked from those who Israel claimed to be active reservists, after they before denied that, they said no one was active, this hinders Israel's capability to do anything. This hinders Israel's ability to conduct attacks everywhere, and not just in the Gaza Strip. And again, with Gaza, well, there were reports, and there could be people. Of course, you will still have people in Israel going and fighting, you know what I mean? It's not like, no, they still have that, people and stuff. But also Israel can seek assistance from foreign countries, primarily the United States, maybe Britain too, with pilots as well. People need to remember that. So that's getting very, very tense for Benjamin Netanyahu and for the defense minister and for the Israeli army too. And people in Israel now are calling this a coup against the army itself. Why? Because, well, up until when are you going to start saying that none of these people are important and trying to downplay everything? They try and downplay everything. Of course, they're downplaying and completely denying the genocide. But internally, the internal problems, the outright denial and trying to downplay everything, and the level of pressure that they're having from the families of the prisoners of war who are being very active with the United States administration. That's why also Witkoff and Trump are having more of this, because they're meeting them. And let's say the Israeli lobby or pressure or Netanyahu are trying to apply pressure on the administration inside of the United States. They could be using the families of the prisoners of war as an example to show that we are, caring for Israel, and we need to finish this off and get the war over and done with. Is the prospect genuine? Is the prospect genuine of having a deal, a real deal, or are we going to have the same scenario again and people are going to get disappointed? Well, number one, there is no guarantee of anything, really. That's what people need to understand. There is no guarantee that there will be a ceasefire that will last and everything will be good. There's simply no guarantee. However, if we judge by the previous patterns, well, Benjamin Netanyahu broke the ceasefires before. Therefore, there must be something now that will be different than before for a ceasefire agreement that will be taking place to hold and to last. Netanyahu still has Ben Gvir and Smotrich asking him to completely end the talks and go on an all-out war. It's as if they are totally detached from the reality, from their capability, from anything that's happening within the Israeli army and the pilots refusing and all of that. And Benjamin Netanyahu, he still might have calculations. The only way a ceasefire can last is if Benjamin Netanyahu himself starts to have different calculations. For example, his government will be protected. Now he passed the budget. The budget was something very problematic for him. When he started to commit massacres again in Gaza, he managed to get back Itamar Ben Gvir. Therefore, having a majority to pass the budget and reducing the pressure of the orthodox political movements inside of his government, who were threatening to withdraw and resign from the government. Now he passed the budget. Ben Gvir and Smotrich are with him. And we need to remember, Ben Gvir, he was the same man who opposed stopping the war in Lebanon. And he was saying, I will resign if we stop the war in Lebanon. They stopped the war in Lebanon, despite the breaches, of course, but the intense war. He remained in the government. Yes, he did resign when they agreed to a deal with Gaza, but there is a precedent of him staying in the government against what he said. Secondly, Smotrich, well, he didn't resign despite threats when they got into phase 1 of the ceasefire. And his condition was, we need to get back to the war again. Now, both of them might have the excuse, or might sell the people the excuse that, well, we didn't resign at the time, or I did resign in the form of Ben Gvir. Now I'm back. Netanyahu did get back to the war. Now we have a different deal, and they will try and sell it somehow to their base. That is possible. Netanyahu, if he confirms, if he is able to convince these people, assuming that he still wants them, and by the looks of it, he still wants them and does not want to have a safety net provided to him by the opposition, so that he can continue and remain the prime minister, even if these people leave him in case he agrees to a deal. That was an offer that was on the table by the leaders of the opposition in Israel after the temporary ceasefire at the end of 2023, beginning of 2024. That offer was there from then. However, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu, he doubted their intentions. He was very suspicious and wary because he's tried and tested, of course. Many of these people who offered him a safety net for his government, they were previous allies with him, and they left him, and they are now, well, adversaries inside of Israel. He didn't want to be in a vulnerable position where he would agree to a deal. He signs a deal, he withdraws from more strategic locations and from the parameter or the buffer zone inside of the Gaza Strip, and declares that the war has ended. And then they leave the government and ask for early elections. It's a very tricky situation. And he still has the excuse of the war when it comes to his court case. So Netanyahu is still using this war and these emergencies and escalations and problems and tensions to skip court hearings, to ask the court for exemptions, to ask them not to attend, to say that, oh no, something urgent is happening. If he ends the war, if he ends the genocide, he's going to lose that. Is he willing to take that risk? There are no indications, which means, well, there's going to have to be something exceptionally magical in the formula to work this time. But they're saying it. Witkoff is saying it. Trump is saying it. If they're going to come up with this formula, it will have to adhere to the demands of Hamas. The demands as in the red lines. And those red lines were a declaration of ending the war, removing the siege of Gaza completely, allowing all aid in, rebuilding Gaza, and getting all of the necessities that they need to rebuild Gaza. These things, Hamas, they had leniency on some of the details, but they never had leniency with the red lines to do with those. So Israel will have to agree to them. Will there be a certain wording that will allow Israel to get away with it, or will Israel be pushed into it again, but breach it again? We don't know that. All that we know is that there are talks. Witkoff and Trump are both of them now saying that we're very close to that deal. Don't forget Hamas last week, senior figures from Hamas, they said that we are hopeful and we're going to hope to give our people good news in the coming period. This means that there are indications that things are happening. Add that to the problems that are happening internally with Israel and with the army. You're going to have to understand that Israel really has no capacity to continue with any ground invasion that will even be remotely close to the initial days of the genocide in the Gaza Strip. At the peak of it, they had approximately 78,000 terrorists inside of the Gaza Strip. Now they have Division 36 operating in certain parts, but again, against innocent civilians, not against the Palestinian resistance.